What's going on, guys? Today we're going to talk about belief systems. And before you scroll on YouTube and literally try to go and consume like another fancy, shiny object-based thumbnail that has a Lamborghini and like someone literally showing like a mansion that they bought in California and Beverly Hills or whatever it may be, it's time to stop looking at these specific objectives and outcomes and not understanding where to actually source that outcome from. Okay. We're in an age and era right now where it's like literally every day people are just scrolling on their phone and all they see are like fitness gurus, coaches, consultants, agency owners, influencers, etc. Simply post only end outcomes and trophies. And what that can clearly do to a lot of young, um, you know, younger individuals that are growing up and still figuring out figuring out more about themselves is, having a basic bridge towards where they're at and where they want to go and how they're going to bridge and reverse engineer that entire process. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how you can get what you want out of life by engineering your belief system. This took me from driving a dump truck, working a 9 to 5 job, or let's say like more like a 24-hour basis job where I worked in the morning to the nighttime, literally driving a commercial dump truck for over 2 years to literally making 3x cash by simply working from my laptop. So I went from doing something completely labor intensive to the next year 3xing my salary or my personal income, and just scaling over 5 years with my agency as well too. So I'll walk you guys exactly through what I did, and I'm going to make it very, very simple so people that are not yet familiar with this process and don't know how to make it work for them can understand where they're at, and you guys can literally follow my entire journey. Because before you choose to make 10K a month, 15, 20, 50, 100, a million a month, you have to internally engineer your belief system and track your habits and thoughts. Okay. Without this specific skill set, it is impossible to actually be an intentional human being and work towards a worthy ideal. And I'll keep saying the word worthy ideal for people that know where that word comes from. It's from Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill. Highly recommend that book. But let's just go right into it. This is exactly how I went from literally broke to now being not broke, and on my journey to making tens of millions of dollars online with our software companies and our agencies. But long story short, let's get right into it. So this is exactly how you can delete your broken mindset or, specific thinking patterns and shift your belief system. Before you set out for any intention to go and achieve any goal, let's say something as even simple as like, hey, I want to learn how to shoot a three-pointer. Let's say you don't know how to shoot a three-pointer at all. First, what you have to do is understand exactly what the task is at hand. What is it required? A ball, a net, okay? Maybe a basketball court, some concrete. You're obviously going to need some pair of hands. I'm assuming everyone has one here, but let's get into the straight point. The reality is you have to basically understand that there's a set and made up principle of things that are required and actual actions that are required in order to basically get good at something. Okay. Let's say that thing is shooting three-pointers. Let's make it very plain and simple. There's absolutely no way that you guys can remotely get close to the amount of work that, let's say, Stephen Curry has put in off court during practice, as opposed to the amount of time that you guys have played real games on the real court with real teams. The time and tension under the skill that was basically developed is 100x more than what it is that we really think to actually do and how we set our intention. So whenever we see an end goal or we see someone having something really, really nice, let's say like a Lamborghini, let's say like $1 million mansion or whatever it may be, we look at the end outcome. And what we fail to see is that that person has most likely have achieved a certain belief system, and they're operating in a specific frequency, which allows them to not just attract these things, but they've basically built their life in a manner where they've done a bunch of work where naturally things are moving towards them through the ways that they've shaped their belief and habits. Okay. So a lot of the mumbo jumbo stuff is going to make a lot more sense because, again, most of you are visual learners just like I am. I never understood things just by reading words. I think making a little bit of diagrams help out. So what I was saying is that this is a little bit of proof. Okay. So this was me, I'd say 4 years ago after I graduated Toronto Fire Academy, simply just working a commercial dump truck job. I did not enjoy it. I think it was probably the most intense and most tough times of my life. But nonetheless, what it did do was it tested where I was, and what I was able to do was understand where I wanted to go, and I knew exactly that position because I was able to look at what I was doing on a daily basis versus, let's say, the blue collar individual that just maybe pulled up in downtown Toronto Bay Street with his 911 Porsche. I was able to make a direct correlation between where I was and where that person was, and I was able to understand that there's something that that person knows or is doing in his life that is allowing him to create these things around him. Right? Again, it's not about material things, but we're getting to how to shift your belief system. So one thing I would say is this, is that it wasn't always like this. Long story short, when I was able to tap into my belief system, I was able to basically scale two companies. One I basically sold last year, which was a real estate advertising company, and we were able to get rid of the data, to a real estate brokerage for a substantial amount. And now we're scaling our Web3 ticketing company, and we're doing a tremendous amount of volume and revenue. As you can see over here, we have the top of the year where we basically show you how to build and deploy agency services that leverage AI growth infrastructures, and we were able to charge $27,000 up front. And here's like another payment where we literally charged around $9,000 for a build and deployment. The point is not to show you these numbers. The point is to show you that what I did within like 2 days, 3 days of real work, I was able to generate a quarter or maybe more than a quarter of my salary working a dump truck job. And I was able to cover that within 3-4 days. So you can understand the time lapse between both things, but now we can put that aside and talk about, okay, cool, Amr, you're just showing all these things. How do you actually get there? So the first thing that you need to understand is you need to have a good understanding of where you're at, right? You need to know that you need to start somewhere. And when you're able to do that, you can start to work the pattern very similar. So I'll tell you how it worked for me, okay? I'm not going to just speak on your behalf and tell you guys what to do because I want you guys to follow my roadmap. I find that that's the way that I learned when I was able to look at somebody else and find very, very similar traits on how they made those steady realizations and they were able to combat that stuff in real time. So let's just say that recognizing belief starts off at 4 years ago when I'm sitting in the dump truck. So long story short, I had these times where I was able to recognize these beliefs that I had about myself and the world and why I deserved certain things and why I felt like others deserved certain things. And I thought that people just had things because they were just born with it. They just got lucky, right? So we're programmed in such a manner where we just think that things happen to people, which they do on a daily basis. But when you start to understand things a lot more, if I close my laptop right now, I am definitely going to end this video. Whereas let's say like a specific action or output, if I go put my car towards a tree, it's definitely going to hit the tree. And it's the same thing that goes with the intention that we have. But understanding your beliefs and how you stand and what your thought process is very important. Okay. So where that stems from is that I feel like a lot of people that have a lot of pressure or they're generally not where they want to be in life, they are very easily able to identify the negative belief systems or specific things. Maybe it's like the way that you think about yourself, the way that you view yourself, your confidence, maybe your speech. Maybe financially you guys are insecure, which again happens, right? Even millionaires are. But let's just go now to obviously the main portion. Like we have to understand the origin. Let's just say that a lot of your guys' objective, which mine specifically, was financial scarcity, right? And the urgency to make money because of survival and general necessity. The analyzing portion is very, very important because until you don't know why it is that you are feeling a certain way or you view yourself in a certain manner, you won't be able to understand how to dismantle that. A lot of the times, or me specifically, was probably the way I was brought up, which I can guarantee stamp on that. The way I was brought up, I was born and raised around entrepreneurs. So there was a set level of standard and intention and principles that were preconditioned and breeded into me. So I was able to kind of like develop these different intuitions and grow with the standard that I wanted for myself. And that was kind of also instilled into me as well. Therefore, again, we know understanding the origin of how to actually like break things down can make it a lot more easier to start getting towards the steps. Understanding that there is change that could be made is the first point once you understand the negative beliefs and you know where it's coming from. And now you're able in a position to be like, okay, great. Now let's do something about it, right? When you know that you can actually make a change, that's when you become in control. So now you go past the portion of just doing your discovery part of kind of breaking things down. Now you get to the point where you're able to acknowledge the change that's about to come, and it's time for you to actually define your worthy ideal. So for me specifically, I had a breaking point where I was able to simply exhaust the amount of work that I was doing while I was working a dump truck job. I was working like literally 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning, all the way up until like 4 or 5 p.m. in the evening, and then getting back up on the truck again in the late night to do an entire night shift. And what that put me to is put me in a position in a pressure point where I couldn't figure out a way to trade more time for my money, right? Or more money for my time, essentially. And I was like, hey, like this is not cutting it, and I'm basically physically, emotionally tired, right? And through that process, what I realized is that I was able to create a worthy idea. I had this image, I had this specific concept in my head that I can actually see myself walking these streets, not being in this dump truck, but actually parking my car, paying my parking meter ticket in downtown Toronto, and walking into one of the largest capital firms or institutions, and simply them having to be one of my clients, right? So through that process, I was able to come up with this specific idea, concept. It wasn't like a very general goal, but it was kind of like a mental thought. It was like a positive thought. Instead of a negative thought, it was a positive thought. It was basically me daydreaming. Very simple. We daydream all the time. But what happened is that idea, that concept, that visualization of myself became so prominent that it was a thought, but it had me feeling it actually had me feeling that feeling in real time. Without me actually hitting the goal or being that person, I was already feeling warm and I was already accepting of the thought. Why? Because I wasn't a victim to my dream. I was essentially accepting the fact that, hey, this is not a reality. And I know I can possibly make this into a reality if I basically accept that there is a set level of work that is required to do and it's worth working towards. Therefore, again, defining the worthy ideal, just like Napoleon Hill said, which is, again, the author of Think and Grow Rich, one of the best books that you can possibly read on, again, tapping into your guys' belief system so you guys can make more money, which is, I know, 99% of why people are here. So let's get back to this right over here. So when you're back into the process where you're able to define your ideal, which is basically the outcome you're striving for. A lot of you are going towards being entrepreneurs and having financial freedom. So if that's what you guys are working towards, you guys actually have to accept the fact that you are somewhere in the outcome is further out and you have to fill that gap. Okay. So let's get into the process where you know where you're going. Let's say you know exactly what you want. Okay. Let's say that you don't know. If you're on this call or if you're still watching this video, sorry about that, and you don't know exactly what your belief, your worthy ideal is, like, don't worry about it. Like, it takes time. Like, you only live life once. So it's worth taking time out and thinking about what direction you want to head into and how you want to do it. But again, if you still need some more time, guess what? Go loop right back up and then go back to the training of recognizing beliefs and do a little bit more deep thinking. But for the ones that already know where they're heading, know what they want, let's assume that we're all heading into this yes path. So now that you know exactly where you know, what you want, let's say it's financial freedom, it's making money, it's being able to pay the mortgage, the rent, the food, the dates, the cars, and all that stuff. Once you know what it is that you want, guess what? Now you actually have to break that down into a goal. Okay, so let's put it this way. This headphone right here, this was produced by Dr. Dre and I think Jimmy Iovine, but again, not important. This was just a thought. Okay, they came into a room together. They had an idea of putting out a product instead of selling music. And essentially, they're like, "Hey, we want to have a physical product in the music equipment space, right?" And long story short, we have a multi-billion-dollar company. I'd say 7 years later, and it went through not just an idea; it went through engineering, crafting, branding, hiring, raising capital, a bunch of things that went into this specific product. And it all started from one person's thought. Guess what? Like, just someone thinking about this has me having this product in my room right now, physically in reality. Okay. So someone committed a specific amount of time in their life to make sure that I got this product on the year of 2025. Okay. So if you can wrap your head around that, then making sure that you're able to get that Lamborghini shouldn't be too much of a big deal, right? As long as you know how to set the goal. So how do we set goals, right? A lot of you guys think it's like, oh, great, let me just open up a book and let me write down I'm going to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. I am a millionaire. Great, that's cool. Now you know how to basically do 1/10 of manifesting, or actually the action of manifesting. That's just basically putting it on paper. Great, that goes a long way, but let me define what it actually means to break down a goal, okay? So for most of you, the goal is to replace your 9 to 5 income with, let's say, you want to supplement that income with the business you started. Let's say you're running an AI agency, which this channel is entirely about, okay? So long story short, how do you go from the point A to point B, right? Cool, great. We can talk about it. We can want it. We can desire it. We can tell other people how badly we think we deserve it. But what is actually going to move the needle with this process? What's actually going to move the needle is understanding, okay, great. What's the goal outcome? What is the only action steps or habits that are basically required in order to actually go ahead and achieve this? So when it comes to money, in my honest opinion, if it's not money making activities, if you're not jumping on calls, if you're not sending text messages, if you're not sending emails, if you're not knocking doors, everything you're doing throughout the day is just complete nonsense. It doesn't actually move the needle with what it is you're trying to do, which is replace your income. So let's say the goal is to make 10K per month. A lot of you are thinking that number is very, very big. And yes, at a certain point when you're starting out, it is. But when you're stepping into the world of making money online and providing services through digital meetings and platforms, you realize that it's actually just a hiccup in the space that you're currently in, you know? So let's break that down a little bit more. Let's say you sell something for $4,000, maybe even less. Let's make it even more simple. Let's say you sell something for 2 grand, okay? If you're able to reach out to 100 people per day, okay? Let's say 100 people you were able to reach out to via Instagram, and out of 100, you had only 5 people message you back, or let's say 5 people interested in whatever it is that you're currently offering, and out of 5 of them, you jumped on 2 calls a day, okay? And let's say you did that consecutively over span of 5 days. So how many calls are you going to have in one week? 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay. So if you're having 10 calls a week, and if you can basically create a habit for a whole month and do 40 sales calls per month, okay? At 40 sales calls per month, and you offer the thing you're offering to in the market, guess what? If you really suck and you don't know what you're doing, you're still going to be closing at a 10% closing rate, or maybe even less. If you're lucky, you'll probably get a couple of deals in the bucket. But more or less, if you commit the entire month and do exactly that at such a measly close rate, guess what? You just supplemented your income completely. Okay. Because you were able to close 3 or 4 deals, very simple. Let's say that you get really, really good and you were able to really harness the power of creating that habit, and you start closing at a 20% close rate. That's pretty intense. Now you've basically almost like 3x'd your cash collected. And now you're not just making the money you want to supplement, you reinforce that habit so well that you've basically blown past the specific goal that you set out for yourself. Again, what we did right now is we just reverse engineered the end outcome. Okay? If you're building a house, you can't just want the house. The house has a foundation, it has frameworks, framing and frameworks, it has electrical, systems that go in and out of it. There's zoning permits, legal aspects, there's money involved. There's not just the house by itself. So understanding how to set a clear goal is very simple. A lot of you guys have money-based goals or financial-based goals, which is cool, which everybody starts off with, and we all still have it too. So I think this is the best way to identify it. What you do once you understand those habits, what you need to do is now change your beliefs around setting the intention of doing those habits, and then most importantly, changing your belief around whether or not you find that it's likely for you to get that outcome. Because if you're doing that specific thing, whether it's sales calls every day or reaching out to people, guess what? That you've basically changed the odds. The odds that you were given with in the beginning of the day is not the odds that you end up with at the end of the day, which is why we play the game, right? So as long as you're basically staking your odds, you're increasing your chances, you're basically going to find something called evidence, okay? Evidence is literally what I've been showing to you guys over here. I have my own evidence. You guys need to get yours. So what your evidence needs to look like is basically, let's say that you just started off in sales. You could never get someone on the call and you're scared to do cold calls. Last month, you only got maybe 10 demos. But now that you know that it's a grit game and you're supposed to do reps, therefore now you commit to a whole 30 days. What you did in 1 month last month, you did in 1 week the second month. Why? Because you were able to find evidence. You were able to understand that you sucked at the thing that you were trying to do. You lacked consistency, you lacked patience, and you lacked intention. Therefore, you found crappy evidence last month, and now by setting a clear goal, changing your beliefs, you find that better evidence. And once you find and you go through this feedback loop, guess what happens? Once you get more evidence and once you get better evidence, guess what happens? You reframe your belief system. What you thought was true wasn't necessarily true no more, because you find out that you're able to, again, recognize your beliefs, analyze it, and then basically reframe your belief system to create a more dynamic system in your programming. What that means is that you are not easily bothered by specific problems or things. Your armor does not chink that often. It takes a lot for you to slow down because you are starting to build thick skin. Okay. Now let's go to, using affirmations that reinforce. Again, affirmations for me is not just speaking into the mirror. I think affirmations is generally, literally, actually writing, acting, habitualizing, and literally doing that thing so well and getting better at it that you're literally only focusing on those tasks. So that's how I reinforce using affirmations through physical actions by training my mind and focusing on the right tasks at hand. The last thing that I would like to say is building a actual plan. Once you get good at understanding what the action steps are around getting specific outcomes, let's say making money, now you basically structure your day, your week, and your month by those actions. And then what essentially happens is you go back to breaking down your goal. You realize that now you have an actionable input and output system, which is full of things that you can do and actions taken, or reverse of those two things depending on what you're focusing on. Usually it's a thought and action, and once you're able to break down the right thought and action, essentially you're able to break down the entire goal. Once you've done that, you can essentially create a habit system. This is why you see a lot of really, really wealthy people. They tend to do a lot less in their day-to-day schedule, but they only move the needle with the most important things. Although they're extremely busy, they do not focus on taking 100 calls. They may take one call that handles a department that takes 1,000+ calls a month. And now they figured out a way to leverage themselves. Therefore, again, now they've created a habit system or a process around something that gives them undeniable proof that the thing that they're focusing on is actually positive and that they should continue to do it. The last thing I would say is remove yourself from environments, areas, and people that do not have the right belief system. If people find it tough to make things happen, they're not goal oriented, action oriented, they're very victim mentality and they're very reactive to the world, those are people that are cancerous. You should find a way to put boundaries and limit accessibility from to those people from you, so you can focus on making sure that when you are reframing your belief system and you are challenging your beliefs, that you're the only one doing that and you're the only one reframing, not other influences. The biggest and the worst thing that you can do is surround yourself with people that are already given up. And let's say you're someone that's working towards something, 9 out of 10 times going from someone that, again, I've had a lot of colleagues and friends, and I'll just tell you right off the bat, not everyone's happy for you when you keep winning. So get used to the fact that you are your only cheerleader and do it for yourself. Okay. So that's that's the last part right there. Constant execution and tracking your progress is number one. Once you start winning, how do you continue to win? How do you think Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan continue to win championships? They just literally, they track their progress. They figured out how they got the first chip. And then what they do is they want to go and do the same thing again, win the championships, but they want to do it by testing out their previous theory and see if they can do it again. So where I'm at, when I used to actually do things, I used to think it was pure luck, sheer luck, that I was able to close these deals up front. I used to just think about making money online. And now, long story short, 4 years later, we've made a little over $2 million. We've gracefully built and sold our agency, and dismantled the mechanisms and assets for a profit, and made a tremendous amount of money doing that as well. And we've also scaled a Web3 ticketing company as well too, with also partnering with a legendary a Hall of Famer, Ron Artest, Meta World Peace, that played with Kobe Bryant in the LA Lakers, which is an equity partner at our company. Here's literally screenshots of us like just processing tickets for one of our events, and just substantial amount of evidence of us collecting a ton of cash through our agency through the years. And I'd like to say that none of this matters if you don't know that the main thing you're trying to do is live with purpose and intention. Money is cool, great. I think making money is very important, but if you're not spiritually aligned, if you're not mentally focused, and you don't have a bigger why, then it doesn't matter how much money you make. You'll always have an empty cup, and you'll never have a real purpose and a real goal to go towards. So this is how I've broken down my belief system. Again, this is not the only way to do it. This is basically a very nerdy way of breaking things down to such a T that you guys understand exactly what things look like step by step. But guys, don't overcomplicate it. I don't need you guys to go and write notes on this video. If you have an idea, if you have an outcome, or if you have something that you've been wanting to do in life, let's say literally starting an online business, go and do it. Take the first step, right? Make that business plan, book that call, watch this training, make notes, take action. Stop waiting on the sidelines. And what I love to say to a lot of people is stop being bench players. Stop watching these YouTube videos thinking that you guys are doing something. You have to watch these videos and do something about it, right? So again, if you actually enjoy this content, again, this is something a little bit outside of what I usually do. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you like these videos that are a little bit on the mindset side, just comment the things that you guys liked about the video. This is literally my raw, uncut journey and just the way that I think. So I'm just trying out different types of styles. But this is exactly what I like to watch and what allowed me to quit my job, continue to do the things. And on days like today as well, where I would literally just park up my truck keys and now be on my way home, I'm able to make a video mid-evening, not worry about anything else, and be at the comfort of my office and shoot great content all these years later. So again, if I can do it, you can most likely do it as well too. The only thing is that, again, it just depends on how priority it is for you. The time's ticking, and if you guys want to learn how to actually start your own AI agency from scratch and you have no experience, or you have a little bit of experience and you've been growing your agency so far, you can literally go to my bio and book in for a free implementation call with myself or either one of my reps, and we can see exactly how we can help you out. And if we can't, guess what? We'll give you a free bonus to our sales training so you can walk away with some value. If you do and you are a good fit, then you're a part of probably one of the best accelerators, because we've spent a little bit over $50,000 on our personal education, coaching, mentorship, and myself, giving it away for free completely on this YouTube channel. So if you like it, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you on the other training.